It was going to be my birthday soon. The line at the checkout was moving slowly, but I didn't pay attention to it. My mind wasn't there, at the supermarket, but somewhere far, far away. In a week, I was supposed to turn 80 years old, and I was hoping that my son would come visit me on the occasion. Given the important date, I decided to spend some money and bought several delicacies that I had avoided for a long time. That wasn't because I couldn't afford them. I got a good pension, which was more than enough for one person. I just didn't have anything to celebrate. But now, I decided to have a feast with my son. Fresh oysters, caviar, expensive whiskey. My Jenny died 3 years ago. 3 years of loneliness and rare meetings with my son, who lived in another city, taught me to appreciate the rare, pleasant moments in life. And my 80th birthday meant that Archer would come visit me. He always came by on my birthday. It has become our tradition. On the day of my birthday, I woke up earlier than usual. I couldn't sleep. I chose my best silk shirt to wear that day, the one that my Jenny bought me. She liked it very much. My wife said that I looked like Alain Delon in that shirt. Jenny liked that resemblance, and I didn't mind. I looked around the room. It was perfectly clean, and the table was covered with a white tablecloth. It's time to set the table. Archer will knock on the door any second now, I thought, and my heart started beating faster in my chest. I began to arrange the plates. At exactly 10 o'clock, everything was already in place. I did it, I thought, sitting down in my chair in anticipation of the arrival of my son. I didn't notice when I fell asleep. I dreamed of my Jenny with little Archer. In the dream, she was very young and beautiful, the way I saw her for the first time. It wasn't until after my wife died that I realized how miserable my life would have been if I hadn't met them, protected them, and won their love. Jenny and I worked at the same company. The fragile, green-eyed brunette immediately captured my heart. We had several mutual friends who told me that the woman was married and had a 3-year-old son. But Jenny's husband was a real tyrant. He got drunk often and beat his wife. Jenny was afraid to leave him because the bastard threatened to kill her and her son Archer. I noticed that the woman liked me. She accepted my support and love. We talked a lot. We were soulmates. I promised Jenny that I would do everything I could to protect her and Archer from her awful husband, who flat out refused to get a divorce and leave his wife and child alone. So one day, I moved Jenny and her son to my village, far away from the city, away from the man who made their life a living hell. We settled in a small log house near the river, and my bachelor life instantly changed, as I now got a family. I quickly bonded with Archer. The boy reached out to me and followed me everywhere, hugging me sweetly with his tiny little arms. It was clear that he didn't get enough fatherly love from his biological dad. Jenny blossomed, smiling more and more often, and my hugs helped soothe her nightly panic attacks. At first, we couldn't shake off the anxiety over the possibility that her ex-husband would come looking for his wife and child and want to take revenge. But when a year had passed since our escape, we calmed down. Every morning I left for work in the city, and when I returned with something tasty for dinner, I was joyfully greeted at the door by the two most dear people in my life, my beloved Jenny and my son. Archer started calling me Dad very quickly, and I didn't mind it one bit. On the contrary, I loved him with all my heart, like my own child. One day, I came home a little earlier than usual, and a real surprise awaited me. Jenny said that a puppy had wandered into our yard. It probably got lost, or maybe one of the neighbors had thrown it out, but when I looked at the four-legged guest, I immediately realized that it was no regular puppy. It was a wolf. Although our village wasn't far from the forest, it was a real shock to see the predator in our house. It was a pity to take the wolf pup to the forest. It was very small and defenseless, like a child. It was unclear whether its mother was still alive and whether it could survive on its own. So we decided to keep the animal. We named it Bucks and raised it like a regular puppy. The wolf pup grew up calm and affectionate. It loved fresh milk and sugar cubes. Bucks played catch-up with Archer, chased the ball, and loved to swim. He never showed any aggression towards us or strangers, but we still tried to keep Bucks hidden from the prying eyes of strangers in order to avoid all sorts of suspicions. Bucks was our pet, a part of our family. Nevertheless, he matured, and one day he left for the forest to never return. He must have heard that call of the wild. We haven't seen our gray friend for a long time after that, and we actually thought that we would never see him again. It was Friday, the end of the work week, and all of my colleagues were in a great mood, because the long-awaited weekend was ahead of us. But for some reason, I felt very agitated that day. I couldn't calm down even for a second, and a few hours later I found out why. Our neighbor Laura called me and screamed for me to come home as soon as possible. She said that something terrible had happened. Laura saw Jenny get into a car with a strange man, and then they drove off in an unknown direction. A few seconds later, Archer ran out after his mother. The child was crying and screaming for the whole neighborhood to hear. Laura took Archer to her place and tried to calm him down. I was so shocked that I don't even remember how I got back to the village. I called my friends and we all started an urgent search for Jenny because I understood that she was in grave danger. We only managed to find her the next morning. She was in the forest, uninjured, exhausted, but alive. As it turned out, her ex-husband still held a grudge, and so he'd been working on a revenge plan for a long time. He managed to find out where Jenny lived and waited for the moment when I wasn't around. The man broke into the house and ordered his wife to get into the car. Otherwise, he would kill little Archer. As soon as Jenny got in the car, he hit her on the head with a blunt object. The bastard took the unconscious Jenny into the forest, tied her legs and arms with a rope, and left her to certain death. When Jenny came to her senses, she couldn't even move. She felt a warm breath on her face, and when she opened her eyes, she saw a pack of wolves that surrounded her from all sides. In her head, Jenny had already started saying goodbye to her life when one of the wolves began to gnaw the rope tying her hands. "That's our Bucks," Jenny realized. The gray animal didn't stop tearing the thick threads with his teeth until he managed to free the woman. But Jenny didn't have the strength to get up or call for help, so she spent the night on the ground in the forest, being warmed up by a pack of wolves who saved her from hypothermia and death until I managed to find her. I woke up in a panic, feeling terrified. My carefully ironed shirt was all sweaty on my chest and back. My hands were trembling, and I couldn't calm down. I had just relived the day when I could have lost my wife and son. Fortunately, the scoundrel was soon detained by the police, and a while later, he died of a drug overdose even before he got his trial. Fortunately, everything ended well, but even the thought that everything could have been different terrifies me to this day. It was just a dream, I kept telling myself. It all happened a long time ago. Having looked at my watch, I was very surprised. It was 4 p.m. already, but Archer was supposed to arrive by 10 a.m. My hands were shaking. I picked up the phone. I listened to the long beeps, but my son never picked up. I was desperate, so I started looking for my daughter-in-law's number. We didn't get along well. She didn't like that my son was too protective of me, and that I nagged them about having children. Sophie was very focused on her modeling career. She said that she didn't even want to think about children yet, and that she could have children later in life. But I was worried if I'd still be there to meet them. Thus, my daughter-in-law often avoided me, but now I had no other choice but to call her. "Hello, how can I help you?" I heard a familiar voice. "Hello, Sophie. Are you okay? Is Archer all right?" I asked, my voice clearly agitated. "We're fine. Why are you asking?" Sophie said, sounding surprised. "It's just I was calling Archer and he didn't pick up." "Oh, he went out to run some errands and forgot his phone. Do you want me to give him a message from you when he gets back?" No, that's fine. I'll call him later. He's alive. He's fine," were the thoughts in my head. "Well, old man, keep it together," I told myself. I was feeling very thirsty. I opened the bottle of whiskey, and at that very moment, I heard a knock on the door. Archer was standing in the doorway, holding a puppy. "Well, hello, Dad." "Here we are," said Archer, smiling. I looked at my son quietly and I couldn't utter a word. Tears were rolling down his cheeks. "Dad, aren't you happy to see us? Meet Bucks, the best dog in the world." I didn't let him finish and pulled him in for a hug. "I'm sorry, Archer, if I didn't spend enough time with you, or if I didn't tell you that I loved you enough, or how important you are to me," I started saying, swallowing my tears. "But what are you talking about, Dad? I know how much you love me, and I love you just as much," my son answered in a trembling voice, and lowering the puppy to the floor, hugged me by the shoulders. We spent the rest of the day talking about everything in the world. We remembered the past, talked about the future, well into the midnight hours. "Dad, can I stay with you for a week?" Archer asked. "Let's go pick some mushrooms in the forest tomorrow. You'll teach me which mushrooms are edible and which aren't. What do you say?" "Of course, son. I'd love to." That night, I slept like a baby. I felt so at ease and at peace. I had a dream about Jenny. My beloved held my hand tightly and told me that she was doing great. We talked about our life and Archer's achievements, our gray friend and his loyalty, and I listened and listened, and just couldn't get enough of her.